I never knew where this was going to end. I mean, they said bumper music, but I'm not up here to do a song and dance. That would not entertain anybody here on that. Good morning, everyone. Like Joel said earlier, if you came in a little bit late, my name is Paul Bassone, and I work as a missionary with an organization called Shoulder to Shoulder, which you guys help support. You guys recently sent a team down, actually, to go work in Mexico. Is anybody present from that team? Can I see a raise? There's a couple of you back there. Guys, I want to say thank you on behalf of Shoulder to Shoulder. Thank you for coming down there and ministering the way you did. The work that you do down there, you don't undermine it like, oh, it's just construction work. No, you do very, very powerful work. You're encouraging not only the staff at Shoulder to Shoulder, but you're encouraging churches down there too. So your presence, guys, bless you for what you did. I really, on behalf, I said, thank you for being down there. All right. So I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Yes, good Thanksgiving. This is the first year my sister actually hosted Thanksgiving. Up until now, my mom's always done it. So it was an interesting transition to seeing my sister have to the host and watching her do it. And I thought, man, there's a lot of work that goes into this. The getting up early there's a lot that goes in when you host. How many of you hosted Thanksgiving at your house? A couple of you did there. The rest of you just mooched off of somebody else doing all this preparation, right? That's the best part. I don't know if I would ever want to host, but for those of you who did the hosting, man, I recognize the hard work that goes into that. You had to prep, you had to get up earlier, your expenses, everybody else did side dish. What's that, 20 minutes? They weren't up at 5 a.m. getting that side dish ready. Those you hosted, you're putting the turkey in and a ton of work in there. I got a new appreciation for those of you who do those kind of hosting when it comes to Thanksgiving. Well, interesting enough, that kind of plays into, we're starting a new series, and it's called Generous. We're going to be talking about generosity. Generosity is a huge theme throughout the Bible, right? It's in the character of who God is. Right? He's generous, and so we reflect generosity because that shows the character, the heart and mind of our God. So it's a big biblical theme, and like I said, it's a character of who God is. And generosity, therefore, becomes something that we need to also be intentional about reflecting to the people around us in there. So today, we're going to be talking about hospitality, okay? We're going to start with this idea of hospitality, and how does that play into what does it mean to be generous in there? So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overlay of here's going to be our discussion points and where we're going to be going. We're going to talk about the principle that comes behind what it means to be hospitable. We're going to talk about a pathway by which we live that out. And then we're going to be talking about a place, but wait, there's more. Okay? So principle, pathway, and a place as we unpack this discussion about hospitality. So first, let's start with this idea of a principle. The principle behind generosity, the principle behind hospitality. Why should we do it? Why should we be intentional? Why should I make this an important aspect of who I am and how I'm living out life here? Well, this is rooted in we're going to discuss this principle. But if we can grasp this principle, it puts us in a headspace that says, this is why I need to pursue what it means to be generous. This is why I want to engage in hospitality in there. So we're going to unpack a lot here in the principle. We're going to actually spend most of our time here. So interestingly enough, I heard you guys just completed a whole series on Genesis, and we're not going to recap all of Genesis, but we're going to start there in Genesis 1 and unpack this principle, and we're going to put it up here on the screen here. Genesis 1:26, it says, then God said, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry. I like that idea of scurry. They scurry along the ground. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. So here's the principle. We are image bearers of God. You, me, image bearer of God. Look to your left, look to your right, image bearers of God. That person that you may have had a fight with on the way here, maybe sitting next to you, image bearer of God. Image bearers of God. You're like, okay, I get it, image bearer of God. What kind of implications come from that? Profound implications. Profound implications. See, I need to grasp, first of all, that I am an image bearer of God. And as a result of that, that gives us an identity, it gives us value, and it gives us worth. Nothing else in creation was created as an image bearer. You and I were. And because of that, we have an identity, we have a value, and we have a worth. That is huge. That God loved us so much that he built that into our DNA, that he made it a part of who we are. We are his, made in his image. And it'd be great if we finished here, or we stopped here, Genesis 1, and yay, image bearers, it's all good. Value, worth, it's set. But if we were honest with each other, and if I had discussions and we sat across, maybe had coffee, I don't drink coffee, but I'll drink something else, but you can drink coffee. And we had a discussion about our value and our worth, I bet we'd unpack some stuff and we'd say, yeah, I'm kind of struggling in those areas. I'm not sure how much worth I see in myself, and I'm not sure about my value. Why? Why do we feel that way? Well, Genesis 3 comes up. Genesis 3, when Adam and Eve, they sinned. They ate from the tree. God said, don't. That's the one rule. Don't eat from this tree. And they did. And you remember what happened right away? Shame. I all of a sudden feel, I got to hide from God. I lost my sense of identity, and I lost my sense of value and worth. And I'm going, I got to hide from God because maybe I don't measure up anymore. What does he think of me now? I'm unsure. I'm uncertain of things. And meanwhile, Adam and Eve are looking at each other like, oh, you're naked. I got to start covering. Do you like me still? All this uncertainty and doubt started flooding in. The whole sense of their identity and their worth and their purpose in that moment came crashing down. And now they're left with, do I measure up? Do I really have worth and value? I'm not sure. Am I an image bearer anymore? And we're living that out today, aren't we? For those of you who have a job, you have a yearly performance review. Do I measure up to the company standards? Am I doing what they want me to do? Am I valuable to the company? Sometimes in our marriages, am I everything she wants? Is he satisfied with what I do? Do I measure up? Sometimes even in our friendships, it's like, what do I have to do to keep you to like me and be my friend? And what if I do this? What if I screw up? And you're going to feel this way about me, and uncertainty and doubt. Now, some of us feel like to meet that need, we'll go, if I perform enough, if I can accomplish X, Y, and Z, my worth and my identity are intact. That's especially true in our job scenarios, right? If I meet the following expectations, I measure up, I'm valuable to the company, and my worth, I don't have to worry about it. But most of us feel like maybe they don't. Maybe I don't measure up. Maybe I'm not doing everything they want. They can can me at any time. Uncertainty. I'm in this role of doing ministry. Sometimes Us who do ministry will sit there and go, this is our identity and our worth and our value. And if I'm doing super good at ministry, my value and my worth are good. But if I'm not, and somebody's dissatisfied, now I'm unsure about my identity and my purpose and my worth, and all that gets convoluted. We sit there and go, where can I really find a worth and a purpose and a value that won't be shaken? Can I find something that isn't dependent on my performance? Can I find something that isn't a worth and an identity and a value that's placed in a person or in a title or in a role? Is there something more secure? I would say, yeah, it's here. It's been here all along. I'm an image bearer of God. You are an image bearer of God. And therefore, we have identity, we have value, and we have worth. But yet those doubts are in there. So we have a big problem. It's like, okay, so how do I regain this? How do I regain this idea of purpose and value and worth again? And that was met in Jesus, right? Jesus helped reintroduce us into this fact that the Father still loves us. And as an image bearer, we again can be restored to our value and our worth. God is already satisfied with me. Guess what? I don't have to perform to meet God's standard to say that he now loves me. He's already poured grace into me. See where I'm going with this? Jesus helped restore us. Now, as a result of this, as we become reacquainted and reattached to our value and our purpose and our worth, we can now become messengers of this. As Christ followers, this is the good news we get to share with others. That there is a God who still loves you, and you may feel like, I don't measure up, I haven't done enough, I don't know if God would want anything to do with me. When we can remind him, yes, he does. And you have value, and you have worth. See where this becomes a bedrock by which all generosity flows out of this idea. It's reattaching people that you have value and worth in the eyes of God. And I'm just serving as a messenger. I want you guys to think back to the Gospels. What types of people did Jesus interact with? Think of them. Lepers, tax collectors, blind people that were told you're blind because of your sin, or maybe the sins of your parents. Jesus reminded them of their value and their worth before the Father. And he engaged with them on that level. And they were reconnected with that. I love that's the heart and mind behind Jesus. I think it's why he went to these kind of people. It was the people that everybody else in society had already said, yeah, your worth and your value, we don't even invite you to the temple anymore. That's how questionable your worth and value is. But Jesus said, no, that's not the Father. Of course, that drove the religious leaders nuts, right? They were like, how? No, God, that's not how God thinks. And Jesus said, yes, that's exactly what the Father thinks. How do we become messengers of that? 10 years ago, on November 23rd, my wife passed away from cancer. In that early morning, and it was in our house, and it was in our bed. It was a little unexpected, but there it happened. And I kind of held her closely. It was in our bed. It was, looking back, it was a very profound, intimate moment. So eventually I was like, I gotta let family know. I've made a call to her family. I made a call to my family. And somewhere in there, I put a text together. And there was a friend that received this text. And he was with his family in Cincinnati. Thanksgiving, spending it there. It was that Friday, right after Thanksgiving. Talked it over with his wife. He got in the car, drove the whole way up from Cincinnati. And he met me in my home. He spent that first night with me. The person I'm talking about is your pastor, Joel. When he spent that night with me, that he drove all that way, he reminded me of my worth and my value. And it's not because of what Joel did. He came as a messenger of God to say, Paul, it's going to be okay. I still love you. You still hold great value and great worth. And I'm going to send Joel to come and spend this night with you, your first night alone without her. See, when you and I choose to be messengers of this, and it shows through our actions of generosity, it speaks profoundly into people. Because there are people going around us and they're all in doubt of their value and their worth, or they're trying to put it in something that is very unstable. And we have a chance to say, Jesus reconnects us with this image bearer concept. That we have worth and we have value. Jesus reconnects us with that. This is an important principle. Before we go any further in talking about generosity, it's understanding it comes from a heart that itself has already grasped. As Christ followers, we've already grasped this idea that my worth and my value have been met in Jesus. He's reconnected me with my purpose of being an image bearer, and I've come alive again in that. And now we are called to become messengers of that. And that kind of leads us into our second point of idea of a pathway. So our principle is we're image bearers, and we need to become messengers of this idea of our worth and value being restored through Jesus. So we have this pathway now that we're going to come into. We become messengers and ambassadors. And generosity is one conduit by which we can go about doing this. Whether we're talking about in future weeks, you got this idea of how do I show generosity in my words? How do I show generosity in my giving, of giving my resources? And today our conversation of generosity through hospitality. It's all rooted in this idea of how can I begin to give out this message that people have worth and value, and you can be reacquainted with this through Jesus again. And that works with both Christ followers. Sometimes we lose sense of that, right? I lose sense of where my real value and worth, and I get tempted to put it in other things, but I need a brother or a sister who will come alongside me and remind me, hey, remember where your worth and value is. It was never shaken. It was always firm. But we also have people surrounding us who have not met Christ yet. What's the word? They don't need to hear it. You're going to hell. I think everybody already feels like the sense of, I'm not good enough. But to let them know that there's a God who has not rejected them, who still sees their worth and value and wants them to be reconnected to it through his son, Jesus Christ. So we become this pathway by which we begin to share with people their worth and their value. Paul in Romans, we're going to put it up here on the screen, Romans 12. Paul's writing, it's right after his whole idea of saying, hey, you have a worth and a purpose, remember? And your act of worship is in serving. So he goes a little further down there. He says, don't pretend to love each other's. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. Can you see written within here, Paul's giving some pathways by which we can re-engage and remind people of their value and worth. Loving each other, really love them, not just pretending. You know, those niceties. Hey, how was your weekend? Good. How was yours? Good. That's surface. Paul's talking about a deep love here. He goes on, love each other with genuine affection. Honor each other. Wow, what would that look like if I was intentional about honoring somebody? It reminds them of their worth and value, right? When somebody honors me, man, I feel valuable. I feel worth. We do that for each other. Be patient in the end. When God's people are in need, be ready to help and give to them. Why do we do it? Their worth and value. It's reminders. And lastly, always be eager to practice hospitality. See, I'm going to hone down now on this idea of hospitality being an expression too. When you invite me into your home, and you say to me, you are my guest of what? Honor. I have invited you into my home. I want to treat you well. I want your time here in my home to be refreshing, to be an encouragement to you. And those things, what they're really communicating is, you have value and you have worth. And I'm just trying to demonstrate it by the hospitality I'm giving you here in my home. And ultimately, it's not me. It's not because you did these things to me, now I have worth and value. No, you're communicating to me this God who you serve, his message. You have worth and value, and I'm going to reflect it in the way I treat you as you come into my home. It's really powerful. Really, really powerful. This is not the typical, well, the Smiths invited us over last month. I guess we should repay it and invite them to come back to our house. And this isn't obligation. This isn't even a concept of we're just being neighborly. This is deeper. This puts purpose and it puts intention behind this act of hospitality. That I want to communicate to the people that are in my home that they have great worth and they have great value. And this is a message from God, and it reflects the heart and mind of God. I wrote in here, this is God's intent and God's message. That when I do these things, I'm relaying these to you. When you leave my house, you leave encouraged, you leave motivated, you leave refreshed in there. So we have this principle of being image bearers, and we have great value and we have great worth as image bearers, but we've lost that. But we're reconnected to it through Jesus. And now Jesus is sending us out as ambassadors, as messengers to give to people what they really need, this idea that Jesus restores the value and worth. And I'm going to open up my home, which leads us to the second point of a place. Now, it's really good. It's like home. That's my home. That's my four walls. I get that. What should that look like? You know, and so what we're saying is, yeah, I can use my home. If you have an apartment, you can use your apartment. And I'm using it as a place of refuge. I'm using it as a place that people can be restored and refreshed. But how do I make a plan for that? And who do I do that with? How do I learn to be intentional with my home that could be used as a command post to impact people? To impact people. I wrote here about what would that look like if I would bring people into my home and I would really care for them. I would really care for them. That I would hear their stories. It wouldn't be just a superficial, we talk about how disappointing our recent football teams have been to us. And we got 50 ideas about how they can fix it, if they would only listen to me. We do more than talk about how's your lawn doing? What are you putting on your lawn here? It looks great. But I'm really intentional about how do I speak into their heart. I want to hear your story. What are you excited about in life right now? What pains are there? How can I come alongside you? How do I wrote this in my note, how do I be a blessing to you? That when you come through the front door, or side door, or back door, wherever people come in, I'm going to be really intentional about what does it mean to bless you. I brought thought into this. I brought thought. That tells value, right? If I'm just winging it, how much value or thought or value or worth goes into that person. But if I'm going, hey, so-and-so's coming over. I know they've been going through this. How can I speak into that? How can I be an encouragement? There's something intentional, and because I'm intentional, that says you have worth and you have value that comes out of that. I want us to also think, I said place plus, a place and more. Some of you are like, well, I don't own a home, or I'm not even in an apartment. I'm still with my parents. I'm going, how do I engage in hospitality? Hospitality is really a mindset that I can transform another place into a place of hospitality, where this opportunity to speak into someone's life. You could sit in a cafe or a coffee shop and have somebody across from you, and you can speak into their heart and speak into their life in a way that reminds them of their value and their worth, and that you're there for them, and there's a God who cares a lot. This could happen in your school cafeteria. You don't have to wait. It's like, well, I don't know how to get people into my home. You could do it in your school cafeteria. You could do it on your college campus. Hospitality isn't only meant for the four walls, although I think it has great value and great worth, because there's a lot that you do. Remember I talked about how my sister had to do all this prep? There's a high cost to inviting somebody into my home, but that goes back to their worth and value. It says it's worth it. It's worth doing the extra work. But I will also take advantage of opportunities that exist outside of my home to do the same thing and speak into people's hearts and to speak into their lives in a way that reminds them of this message, that there is a God who loves them, who still sees them as people of worth and value, because that was what Jesus did. Jesus didn't wait. He didn't have a home to invite these people into, so he met them where they were at. But the message was still the same. You have great worth. You have great value. The Father cares for you and wants to be reacquainted with you. So it doesn't matter where. Hospitality can happen. It's a mindset. So we take wherever we are, in the workplace, to our schools, to the mall, to coffee shops. We are ambassadors and we are messengers of this wonderful, wonderful message that comes out of that. So I wrote here, here's the challenge. How do I begin to develop a mindset of hospitality? Let's start with that first step of a principle. I understand that myself, as an image bearer of God, I have great worth and value. I have so much great worth and value that God sent his Son to take on my punishment so that I could be restored to the Father and fully now engage my worth and value. It no longer is in doubt. It is no longer put into other things that are going to fail me and put me back into this, maybe, do I have it? Do I not have it? I'm an image bearer of God who's been restored to my worth and value through Jesus. Now I see my calling to go out and share that message, which is it's the essence of the gospel, right? It's in Jesus. Those things that prohibited me from being in right relationship with God, it's been dealt with. And because it's been dealt with, I've been reconnected into my value and worth. And so we want to take that message to other people because they're in search for this too. They deeply, deeply want to find it. And we have an opportunity to demonstrate that message as well as speak that message into people's heart and mind. And that's the value of hospitality. I now see this as a pathway and a conduit. And now I'm going to offer up my home and say, God, use my home, use my apartment, use wherever I go as an opportunity to speak this message that I'm still learning to hold on to myself. I don't want to make it sound like I've got it together. I am firmly latched onto my identity and my hope and worth being in Jesus. I sometimes struggle with that, and I need to be reminded of where it's at in there. I want to use a couple examples that have happened. 2 examples where hospitality was done on my behalf, and 2 examples of how I learned to do hospitality, okay? First one is this. When I was a wee lad, when I was like in high school and in college, there was a friend. She lived up in Cuyahoga Falls, and her parents opened up their home, and about anywhere from 6 to 20 high school and college students would come on every Friday night, and we would play euchre. Oh, did I get to learn euchre really well because of that. And so we would go there, and there'd be tables of people, and it wasn't my friend, it was my friend's mom. We knew her as Mrs. A. Mrs. A. And Mrs. A, she would greet everybody as they came in. She was a phenomenal card player. Phenomenal card player. It's like, I hope I get her as a partner, you know, like, because I want to win. But many times, Mrs. A, she would find the new person that came and said, you're new to this? You be my partner. I'll teach you and help you learn to play euchre. And she would sit down and have conversations with us. She stayed up till like 2, 3 in the morning because we would be there that late at that age. And she would sit and have conversations with us, and we would share things that were going on in our lives. And she was a great resource. But by her opening up her home and offering Kool-Aid and popcorn, because they weren't rich, it's not like they were going to order pizza for 20 people every Friday. But we'd make popcorn and we'd have Kool-Aid. Her home was a refuge. Her home was a command post by which she spoke into dozens of people's lives. Over a span of, I want to say like 15 or 20 years, she did this. And I remember as a young adult, as a teenager coming in there going, I feel here's a good place. I feel safe here. I feel welcomed here. I feel here I have sense of value and worth. This is just a woman who offered up her home for young people to come and play euchre. And we got popcorn and Kool-Aid out of it. But she spoke worth and value into my life and into dozens of other people's lives. And that had great worth and value in me at that time in my life. Simple, but it spoke into my life in that time. A second opportunity that people had in opening up their homes, the pastor I was going to the chapel at the time, and Gary College was our college pastor at that time. And Gary brought a group of us young men, and we were able to come into his home. And we would just go there to hang out and just talk. But I got a chance, by him inviting me into his home, I felt, wow, I felt privileged to be able to be there. But I got to watch his marriage. I got to see how his husband and wife, how did they interact? He had 4 kids. I got to see him be a father. I felt like I got a sneak peek early on, like this is what it means to be a godly family. And this is what it means to be a godly husband. And this is what it means to be a godly father. And I was like, you invited me. I get to be in on this and to watch this. Wow, thank you for privileging me to be able to do that. And that was so valuable to me. But it reminded me again of my worth and reminded me of my value. He invited me into his home. He invited me into his home. Now, because of what these people had done for me, it taught me to say, hey, how can I use my home to be an outpost? So I'll share 2 examples here of things that my wife and I got a chance to do. There was this time, there was a young lady that she was a fellow worker with me at the church I was with at the time. And she was engaged to be married. And things were going along really super smooth. They were prepping for their wedding. And 2 months before the wedding, he just said, I'm not in love with you. We're pulling the plug on this. And she was devastated. She was devastated. Sue and I were able to invite her into our home. And she spent about 4 or 5 days with us. We had a spare room. We said, anything you need, we're here for you. This is a person that needed healing, that needed some time to reconnect, to regroup. Her worth and value didn't happen because of what we did. We were just a reminder of God who wanted to be there and walk this with her. But because we took the time to bring her into our home, that sent that message out too. The last one I want to share with you is I got a buddy, he'll be coming to second service. After Sue passed away, a couple years after that, I met this young man. I was helping out with our college ministry. And I met this young man that he didn't have a good upbringing. His dad had abandoned him and his mom when he was, I think, less than 5 years old. So he never grew up understanding his worth and his value through his earthly father. And so he had that was really questionable in his life. Do I really matter to somebody? And I got to know him through the college ministry, but I was like, I got a room in my basement with its own, bathroom and stuff like that. I said, would you want to move in with me? And he did. 6 years later, he's still there. But I don't regret it because he has actually ministered to me as well. By me inviting him into my home and letting him stay there, to kind of be maybe a little bit of what his father wasn't for him. But ultimately, I told him, I said, don't put your worth and value in me. It's not me. I'm just telling you something that the Heavenly Father feels about you. That Jesus has already met in your life, and you just need to be reminded. And that's made a big difference in his life. And the thing I wasn't planning on is it ended up being a blessing to me as well. And I don't regret that. So I got a couple closing points I want to do here, and Joel and I are going to have our fun little discussion up here. One, here's a good takeaway. You are an image bearer of God. You have your identity. You have your worth and your value. That was met in Jesus. The day you invited him in, he came with that message of, you have great worth and value. Now go out and live that out. Secondly, as a Christ follower, how do I go out and be a messenger of this? How do I go out and be a messenger of the value and worth that other people need to discover in Jesus? Thirdly, I want us to think through, how does that look like? we're going to spend just a few minutes here in prayer. Well, what I want you to do is, would you consider offering your place to the kingdom of God? Say, God, here's my home. Here's my apartment. I am offering it to you to use for your purpose and your kingdom. And then the second part of that prayer is going to be, who do you want it to start with? God, would you bring that right person into my mind that I can do that with? So we're just going to spend about 30 seconds here. I want you to bow your heads and start to have this conversation with God. What do you want to do with your place? And ask God to begin to reveal who you want that to start with. And then I'll close this in prayer. God, I think back to that last song we did, and we said, "Great are you, Lord," and it is true. You understood the brokenness that we had. You understood how disoriented and detached we felt in being an image bearer. And you reintroduced us to our value and our worth through Jesus. Great are you, Lord. God, would you lead us as your people and how we can continue to share that message of Jesus being the answer to our value and our worth, that he reintroduces us to that. Would you use our places for your sake, for the rescue of people? Would you lead us into the right people that you want us to have that impact on? This is all for your glory. This is all for your honor. We do these things. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Oh, there you are.
Hey. All right, so we're going to change things up during Advent. I know for the remaining time, it often, when we hear a sermon, we can often just walk away and we can kind of say, we liked it, we didn't like it, you know. But I think what we don't often do is actually get a chance to hear from whoever's speaking and actually ask some questions of how this gets lived out in a real world, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we all have homes, we all have those kind of things. But the thing that stuck out to me, Paul, you said, it was such a huge, hospitality is a mindset, right? Mm-hmm. Those people don't know Paul, and you just embody that. I don't know if you know that or not about Paul, but ever since you started in college ministry, there are multiple college students who would say the same thing. When I'm around Paul, I just know I'm going to just be encouraged on the way out. It's just what you do. We were friends for a long time, and a while back we talked about what if drinks kind of said who we were, and I know this can get dangerous, but regular drinks, not drank. Okay, drank. So we always said Paul was kind of the Gatorade. It was just that what you needed to refresh after a long, hard battle. That was just kind of Paul. And I won't share what the other ones were, but we all kind of, it's just who you are. So as I think of the mindset, I want to kind of just focus. You talked a lot about how it plays out with followers of Christ. Could you take a minute and actually explain the second one, though, of how does that mindset actually work out with those who don't follow Jesus?
Yeah, it's being intentional to possibly invite somebody. It's I know they don't know Jesus, but I want them to come into my home, see me in my real habitat, for good or for bad. Here it is. My kids are just as messy as your kids, and I go through the same things like you go through. But it's reminding them of that value. And so it's getting to know them, hearing their stories, And maybe it's a lot to, like, if you had a Christ follower in your home, I would really encourage you, like, end it, like, how can we pray together? Can I pray for you? Super powerful in doing that. Now, this person who probably may not be a Christ follower, that would be like, what? Could feel like a little bit maybe a bait and switch. You brought me here for dinner to pray over me. But I think if we said to this person, you said, hey, I hope you really enjoyed your time here. I'd like to pray. Is there something I could pray? We're not going to do it right now, but I have this relationship with God, and I like praying for people and what they're going through. And just leave it at that. And they share. I've met very few people that will go, nah, I don't need any prayer. I'm good. Most people will say, hey, I don't even know if I believe in God, but you do? Sure, I'll take some prayer, in there. And so it just, again, super being intentional, hearing them, meeting them where they're at. I'm not telling them what's wrong with their life and what they need to correct. And by the way, you're not doing this and not doing this. And no, I'm going to show the hospitality of God. Yeah. And maybe they get a connection with God and God's people in a different way than they've ever had it before. But it's, again, being intentional. And that may be set up over a process and a series of time. Yeah. It's not just inviting them in one time, but maybe a couple months later, I'd like to have them back in.
Yeah, I love it. You look at Jesus' life, and he was always going to places and staying long time. Like, it wasn't like you just kind of saw somebody, was like, you need to accept me, let's go on. Yeah. Like, say the prayer now, let's go. Like, he was always intentional about spending way more time than the disciples were comfortable with. Absolutely. Like, we're always like, shouldn't we be going? Yeah. And he's like, we're not done here yet. And he would just hang out, and he would just be intentional that way. I think you said it too. I think, and I think a lot of us in this room probably have the same feeling. I don't think many people today need another reminder of how unworthy they feel. I think that's pretty much a given. I think you talk to anybody in work or anywhere, they know. Like, they have a general sense, like, I'm not killing it every day, right? I'm not.
And I hope no one finds out.
Right, exactly. And I hope no one finds out. Exactly. And I think so much of that is just like breed in the world today. So I guess it kind of comes to the second question, that is like, so then how do we take that mindset of hospitality, generous hospitality, being in a mindset of it, how do we take that outside the home then?
Yeah, I think it comes back down to this word intentionality again. First of all, just offering these moments and these spaces that God has me in regularly, whether that's regularly, yeah, I got that right, regularly, whether that's my workplace, it could be the gym I go and work out at. It could be my school cafeteria. It could be the coffee shop I go to study. And there are people you see on a regular basis, and you say, how could I be an agent and a messenger in these locations as well? It's at my church, we call it praying for the no-brainer moment. I mean, it's so... if you want to dare to pray that to God, he'll give you these no-brainer moments. You don't have to sit there like, how do I make this a spiritual conversation? We were just next to each other riding the bike. It's like God will give you these no-brainer moments. And I say, okay, here, how do I speak into this moment? And it's not feeling like I got to lay out the whole spiritual law. They've got to hear the whole story of the gospel. I'm just speaking to this little moment. And hopefully we can continue in that. So it's a mindset of just saying, God, wherever you have me, whoever you have me getting to know, I'm ready. I'm ready to speak into those moments.
Yeah, I think we can complicate it too much and just kind of assume like we have to have all these things lined up and, what if they ask about this question or this question? When in reality, what they're looking for really is more that intentionality of like, do I really value, or am I a project that you're just kind of going after, right? Like, so last question, I'm going to kind of leave it up to you. I'm going to do a dealer's choice so you can decide which one you want to take, all right? Okay. This was not scripted, so you're welcome. So the question is this, and you can take either one you want to take. One question you can ask is, why is it so difficult to live out? That's one option. Or I'm going to give you the other option. Why is it so difficult for it to be a mindset? Because I think those carry two different things.
Yeah, okay. Try to do this in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 minutes on that one. To live out generously as a whole, let alone hospitality, it takes a mindset of, I've already surrendered everything to God to be used by God. So whatever cost goes into this, time, resources, I've already given those over to God. So my home, all right, God, it is now at your disposal. My home is no longer my castle that I go to get away from the world. I am now making it a command post to speak this out. So it's surrendering my home, it's surrendering these places that I go to, that I'm looking to get what I want. I just want to work out. I just want to go study. I just want to get away and therefore lock my door. I'm saying, okay, God, I'm done with that. I'm giving those things over to you. So if I can develop that culture in my head to say, I've given this over, I think that changes how I view my home, because I'm seeing there's something worth it. This sacrifice, this cost, this price tag, I don't care. You gave your son, okay? You've already set the bar of what a price tag looks like, you know? So me giving these things over to you, I'm just falling in line with your heart and mind.
So it feels a lot more like an intentional, you said a lot. I think surrender of like, okay, this is not my home, this is not my finances. Like, we do it all the time for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Like, we'll spend the extra money, we'll do the extra gifts because it's the holiday season. I think so often it's, how does that look throughout the year of like, how do I do that intentionally with my money, with my home? Some of those pieces sound like kind of those familiarity parts. Anything you would say then in closing, you'd say like, if you could leave us with anything as far as when it comes to generous hospitality, is there anything else you'd say, I want them to know this before we wrap up?
Be willing to think outside the box. You know, invite college students over to your home. Yes, they'll eat you out of house and home, but for those of you who are older adults, they need to hear the wisdom in your life experiences, and you need to listen to theirs too, and would greatly impact them. Be willing to, you know, I had a family that invited me over on Friday for Thanksgiving, knowing I don't have Sue. And these holidays can be really rough for somebody who's lost a husband, a wife, or lost a mother and a dad. And you inviting them into your home and saying, celebrate this time with us. I want to remind you your worth and value. So think outside the box. It could be neighbors. It could be the person you're going to school with. But you're opening up a broad field to God. Dangerous. But man, can that pay off. Man, can that pay off. So think broad. Think outside the box. Give God, surrender to Him a big field. And then see who He brings in through the process.
Awesome. Hey, can we just say thank you to Paul for coming out and sharing with us more? I appreciate it. So thanks. Thanks over to Rich, and we'll close out.
Thanks again, Paul. Just a couple quick announcements. Tonight there is no community students, so enjoy your evening. Community Operation Christmas Child, thanks for participating in that. We collected 61 boxes this year that are going to go out to kids around the world, so great job there, community. And then a reminder, Christmas is in full swing here. Coming up on the 23rd is our Eve before the Eve service. We have 2 services on that night at 5:30 p.m. and 7 p.m. So it will have plenty of seats here for everybody you want to invite and bring. We encourage you to come out. Have a great week and find somebody to be intentional with.